So fellas, power and punching power is a term that's commonly discussed amongst the MMA community about how hard some fighters hit. You know, the ones that are able to put people away with little to no effort just because of how hard they hit. So I'm going to be going through the main fighters in the UFC, the big stars, and the ones that are kind of hyped up for their punching power, and ranking these fighters on a tier list based on punching power. So we've got ridiculous power, meaning they are some of the hardest hitters in the UFC. And then we've got allergic to power, which is kind of like they don't really hit that hard. In fact, it's actually they could clock someone with a really good shot and the fighter wouldn't even get wobbled. So we're going to be ranking them on a tier list. Let me know if you agree. And obviously, by the way, this is pound for pound power, so there might be heavyweights on this list that are lower down than fighters in a lower weight class. I'm not saying these fighters in a lower weight class hit harder than heavyweights, obviously. This is more pound for pound power. But we'll start off with Jon Jones, the heavyweight champion of the world, and most people would regard him as the greatest of all time. And I'm going to put this dude straight in the allergic to power. I said this in a video the other day. It's kind of crazy how Jon Jones is the greatest of all time, and his boxing and his punching power is horrible. I mean, apart from that body shot landed on Shogun after he absolutely destroyed him for multiple rounds, this dude isn't really known for his power. I mean, he landed a good head kick on DC, but then later in that fight, he got popped for steroids as well. He's just never really been known for having good punching power or just overall great boxing and stand-up. I mean, his kicks are great, but as far as boxing and punching power goes, Jones has never been known for it. He doesn't tend to put people out. He's never really been a big threat on the feet apart from his oblique kicks. And it's shown later on in his light heavyweight career when he was getting outstruck multiple times and he was taking way more damage on the feet than the guys he was going against in the later on in the light heavyweight division. Like the first fight with Gustafsson, the Thiago Santos fight, and obviously the Dominic Reyes fight. Jon Jones just doesn't really hit that hard. And now that he's in the heavyweight division, ironically, he might actually be one of the least hard-hitting heavyweights in the top 15. Out of every heavyweight in the top 15, Jon Jones is definitely amongst one of the least hard-hitting in that ranking. So I'm going to put Jon Jones in allergic to power. Great fighter, great martial artist, super well-rounded, but as far as power goes, he doesn't have it, and it's crazy how the dude has managed to become the greatest of all time without even a drip of power. So I'm going to put Jon Jones in allergic to power. Next, we have the bantamweight champion of the world, Sean O'Malley. Now, I feel like Sean O'Malley is one of those fighters that uses a lot of technique as well as his power. I'm going to put him in powerful. There's no doubt in Sean O'Malley's definitely extremely powerful. I'm not going to put him in ridiculous power because it's not like every single time he connects, he puts him out. You know, the fight with PTN was very back and forth. You know, the fight with Chris Mutino didn't put Mutino out there super quick. He couldn't finish Marlon Vera, but then again, Marlon Vera's got one of the best chins in the UFC. But with that being said, I can't put Sean O'Malley in average when he did go out there and sleep Aljamain. Well, didn't sleep him, but dropped Aljamain Sterling and, you know, seriously wobbled him on the feet. And you look at his early UFC career, he was putting people out there left, right, and center. So Sean O'Malley's definitely a very, very powerful guy. One of the most powerful bantamweights in the world. And if you make a mistake against Sean O'Malley on the feet, it could cost you the fight because he does hit very hard. But again, it just shows how good of a striker he is. He's super technical on the feet, and that is why he's able to land these shots on the feet. It's not necessarily that he's got one punch KO power. I mean, he does have one punch KO power, but it's mainly his technique that he's able to get him these finishes on the feet because he's that far ahead of everyone else in the bantamweight division on the feet. So for Sean O'Malley, I'll definitely put him in powerful. It's not ridiculous power. It's not like every time he's connected with someone, they've been put out of there, but he definitely hits really hard. Then we've got Islam Makhachev. I'm also going to put Makhachev in powerful as well. I mean, he's not really... Him and O'Malley are kind of different because obviously Islam Makhachev isn't this striker who uses necessarily striking technique to win fights, but from the striking that we have seen in the few fights with Islam Makhachev, this dude hits extremely hard. I mean, the way that he put Gleison Tibau out there a few years ago, and then even recently knocking out one of the best strikers in the UFC in Alexander Volkanovski, and it wasn't like I know he was on short notice, but wasn't like Volkanovski had suffered a KO before that. So it was a really, you know, solid KO that he had against Volkanovski. He landed, so I'm not going to say he wobbled him, but he landed some massive shots against Dustin Poirier on the feet, dropped Charles Oliveira as well. So Islam Makhachev, from the striking that we have seen in the few fights that he's actually displayed it seems like Islam Makhachev hits really hard. And if he improves his striking game, honestly, it's looking like he might actually be a really powerful lightweight. So again, I'm not going to put him in ridiculous power. It's not like he's displayed one punch KO power where the second he connects, you're out of there. But he definitely hits hard, and we've definitely seen that in his past few fights as his striking has evolved. So I'm going to put Islam Makhachev in powerful as well with Sean O'Malley, but those two are kind of different. Islam's striking is effective because of the threat of the takedown, whereas Sean O'Malley's just a solid striker. Then we've got Israel Adesanya. Now, Adesanya's a weird one because he has got some really good KOs in his I'm going to put him in average, by the way, because he has got some really good KOs. The KO that he had against Alex Pereira, the only dude in the UFC to not only KO but absolutely flatline Alex Pereira. That was insane. The KO he had against Robert Whittaker as well. These finishes are crazy. But there's also a lot of fights where he connects solid against these guys and he's not able to put them out of there. He couldn't do it to Jared Cannonier. He couldn't do it to Marvin Vettori. He couldn't do it to Whittaker in the rematch. He couldn't do it to Yoel Romero. I don't even want to talk about that fight. And obviously couldn't do it to Kelvin Gastelum. And I just feel like he's not, obviously couldn't do it to Sean Strickland as well. And Israel Adesanya just ain't consistent enough. If Israel Adesanya was getting KOs every 2 fights or every few fights or every other fight, he would probably be on the powerful side of this list, but he's just not consistent enough. Like, most of the time when Adesanya fights, it is going to a decision. And don't get me wrong, similar to Sean O'Malley, he's an extremely technical striker, one of the best in the UFC. But as far as power goes, apart from the Whittaker and Alex Pereira KO, what has he really done? So I'll put him in average for power, and that's kind of being generous. I would argue that it could even be a meh, but no, I'll put Israel Adesanya in average for power. Then we've got Tom Aspinall. I'm going to put Tom Aspinall in ridiculous power. Yeah, Tom Aspinall's one of those guys in this list that is kind of like a more of a technical guy, but he also hits extremely hard from what we've seen in the UFC. I mean, his last 2 fights have ended in a first-round KO. KO'd Marcin Tybura when Tybura was on a bit of a streak. KO'd Sergey Pavlovich out stiff as well. Obviously, knocked out Sergey Spivak as well. He just hits extremely hard, even in his UFC debut, in his early UFC career. Aspinall's always been one of the hardest-hitting heavyweights, and he's one of those heavyweights that if he lands a good shot, from what we've seen, it's over. And I feel like that is why Jon Jones don't want to fight, because if Aspinall lands that 1-2 on Jones, I don't know if Jones' chin is holding him up. Aspinall hits extremely hard. Now, he's not like a Derrick Lewis in the sense where he's got nothing but power, where he kind of relies heavily on power. The good thing about Aspinall is he also has the technique to back it up. But from what we've seen, he hits extremely hard. Like, it's the second he lands a shot on someone, they're either getting wobbled, they're either getting backed up, they're either getting dropped, whatever it is. It's clear to see that Aspinall is definitely one of the hardest hitting heavyweights in the UFC right now. So I'm going to put Tom Aspinall, the first guy, in ridiculous power. And I'm sure he's going to have a lot more KOs in his resume. But yeah, Tom Aspinall, he is one of the only guys on this list where he just has to land a good shot on you and it puts you out of there. And obviously he is a heavyweight as well, which helps. But I'm going to put Aspinall in ridiculous power. Then we've got Paddy Pimblett. Now, this might be disagreed with amongst a lot of people. I'm going to put Paddy Pimblett in average. Now, I know there's going to be people seeing me put Paddy Pimblett and Israel Adesanya in the same tier list, and they're going to think that's horrible, but Pimblett actually hits kind of hard. The dude is a massive lightweight, and I'm going to be honest, he does crack a big punch. I mean, he wobbled Tony Ferguson. I know it's a wash, Tony Ferguson, whatever. Got a great KO in his UFC debut against Luigi Vendramini. He's hit a lot of big shots against other guys, Vargas, Levitt as well. The Jared Gordon fight, he couldn't really get going, but Pimblett is a big lightweight. Does he have the technique to KO someone? No. His striking on the feet just ain't sufficient enough. He does heavily rely on his grappling, and his striking is mainly used to set up the submissions and set up the ground game. But there's no doubt that the dude is a big lightweight, and he can crack a punch. I know people are going to be looking at this list, seeing that I put Pimblett in average above, well, on the same tier list as Israel Adesanya, but I'm going to put Paddy Pimblett in average. I think if Paddy Pimblett improved his striking technique a little bit, and he was to land a flush shot on one of these lightweights, he could genuinely put someone out of there. The only problem with Pimblett is the technique. He don't have the technique to back it up, but as far as power goes, I feel like people completely overlook Paddy Pimblett's power. So if he can sharpen up his striking, honestly, I can see Pimblett putting a couple of these ranked lightweights out of there. Obviously not anyone crazy good, but I'm going to put Paddy Pimblett in average. He's not got crazy power, but the dude is a big lightweight, and I honestly think he can crack. Then we've got Ciryl Gane. Now, for a heavyweight, I'm going to put Ciryl Gane in meh. Now, I know he put Tatu Ivaza out there and he put Sergey Spivak out there, but you look at Ciryl Gane's finishing sequences, it isn't like he's going out there and landing one big shot and putting them out cold. He has got really good striking, definitely one of the best strikers in the heavyweight division, and that is why he's able to finish people. Because Ciryl Gane, his whole game plan is to break you down. It's not to land one big shot like a Francis Ngannou or a Derrick Lewis. He wants to break you down round after round, and then when you feel like you've got nothing left, he likes to go for the finish there, like he did against Tatu Ivaza. And like he did against Sergey Spivak, I mean, that Sergey Spivak finish, Spivak looked like a fish out of water. He was just holding against the cage, didn't really want to engage with Ciryl Gane, and that allowed Ciryl Gane to kind of just tee off on Sergey Spivak until the referee stopped the fight. So, don't get me wrong, it's not like he's allergic to power. He definitely hits hard. But for a heavyweight, I wouldn't say he's one of the hardest hitting heavyweights out there. And I would say, again, similar to Jones, out of all the heavyweights, he's probably the best striker or one of the best strikers. But as far as power goes, He isn't one of the most hardest hitting heavyweights out there, so I'll put Ciryl Gane in May. Really good striker, but as far as power goes, he's definitely not one of the most elite when it comes to heavyweights. Then we've got Alex Pereira. I mean, this dude has to go in ridiculous power. I mean, he's probably the pound for pound hardest hitter in the UFC right now. I remember even when he just moved to light heavyweight, how everyone was talking about his left hook. And it seems like it's like a thing that everyone knows. Like, I remember when Khabib was fighting and he was in the lightweight division and everyone was talking about how everyone knows what Khabib is going to do to you. He's going to try and take you down and nobody can stop it. And I see that being very similar to Alex Pereira. Everyone knows the left hook is coming. We've known this for a while now. But nobody can seem to stop it. Landed the left hooker and was more of an uppercut, but still landed the left shot on Jamal Hill, put him out of there. Landed the left hook on Yuri Prochazka, put him out of there. Well, he didn't put, he put him out there at the end of the first round. Then obviously the head kick. The fight with Sean Strickland as well. The sequence he had against Israel Adesanya, and even in kickboxing as well. If you look at his Glory kickboxing highlights, Pereira's one of the hardest in the UFC. Whoa, pause. He's one of the hardest hitters in the UFC. He's just one of those guys. He just has to time the perfect shot and land that shot, and he's done. And he doesn't even have to be winning the fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's one of the best strikers in the UFC as well. But look at that first fight with Adesanya. He was losing that first fight with Adesanya, and he just had to land a good shot on Adesanya, and bam, the first guy to ever finish Adesanya in MMA. He's extremely hard hitting. And I think if he was to go up to the heavyweight division, even though I wouldn't favour him to beat Tom Aspinall or Jon Jones, I wouldn't even be opposed to the idea of him landing a left hook on one of those guys and putting them out of there, because he hits extremely hard. By far the most dangerous light heavyweight in the world. And I mean, his light heavyweight resume already just shows that. He hits extremely hard. And he's just so powerful. Alex Pereira, ridiculous power, and I just don't see anyone being able to tank that left hook from Alex Pereira. And the people that have even tried have ended up getting put to sleep. So I'm putting Pereira in ridiculous power. Then we've got Leon Edwards. I'm going to put Leon Edwards in meh. I mean, he's definitely one of the more technical strikers on this list, but similar to with Ciryl Gane, it's not like he's got zero power. He's just more of a technique-based guy. He wants to outpoint you. He wants to outclass you on the feet. He doesn't really want to look for the KO. I know he's got one of the most viral KOs in UFC history with the fight with Kamaru Usman, but on a fight-to-fight basis, Leon's not extremely hard-hitting. I mean, he couldn't rock Colby Covington, obviously didn't get the finish either. Couldn't do it to Usman in the trilogy, but again, Usman's one of the best welterweights. Couldn't do it to Nate Diaz. Couldn't do it to Rafael dos Anjos. I mean, couldn't do it to Luque as well. He's just a very, very high technical, high skill striker. And he just doesn't really rely on power. I feel like if he lands the perfect shot and times you at the perfect time, like he did against Usman in the rematch, he definitely has the capability to put you out of there. But he's just not really known for his power. He's more of a, like I said, a decision guy. He likes to outclass you on the feet and take you to a decision. And that is just Leon Edwards' base. He's not a powerful guy. He's not known for his power. And he's just, I feel like, yeah, I'm not saying he isn't powerful, but he doesn't display a style that necessarily allows him to use his striking to it. He allows him to use his power to his full advantage. So I'm going to put Leon Edwards in May. Definitely not one of the hardest hitters in the UFC. Then we've got Sergey Pavlovich. I'm going to put Pavlovich in powerful, and I'm not going to put him in ridiculous power. And this isn't just because he's on a 2-fight losing streak, but I said this even before the fight with Tom Aspinall. Sergey Pavlovich's power is completely different to like a Francis Ngannou or a Derrick Lewis type of power. You look at Sergey Pavlovich's finishes. It's never a one-shot done. It's never like he connects with someone and they're out cold. It's always a sequence of punches. He's definitely really powerful for a heavyweight. Definitely one of the hardest hitting heavyweights out of there. Because if he lands a big shot on you, most of the heavyweights that we've seen against Sergey Pavlovich end up getting wobbled, dropped, and then he goes for the finish. But it's not like a one-hitter quitter. It's not like the second he connects, you're out cold. He'll land a big shot, you'll get wobbled, and then he'll finish. Follow it with a sequence, get you against the cage, follow it with a sequence, you'll get dropped, then he'll follow with ground and pound and you'll get finished. That is Sergey Pavlovich's power. He's definitely hard hitting, but he's not like a Francis Ngannou where the second he connects, you're out cold. He connects, you get wobbled, he follows up with a multiple sequence, you get dropped to the floor, goes for the ground and pound, gets to finish. That's Sergey Pavlovich's power, so he's definitely powerful, but I wouldn't say he's the most powerful heavyweight in the world, and I saw that coming into the fight with Tom Aspinall, how he definitely hits hard, but it's not like a one-punch KO power, but he's definitely powerful for a heavyweight. Then we've got Alexander Volkanovski. I might put Volkanovski in May as well. I'll put Volkanovski in average, actually. I feel like it's kind of criminal for me to put Paddy Pimblett above Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski definitely hits hard. I mean, you can see from the damage that he shows in the opponents that he's facing, but he's not really known for his KO power. He's known for just breaking people down round after round. I mean, the major finishes that he's got in the UFC, obviously the Korean Zombie fight, I mean, he didn't KO Korean Zombie. Herb Dean had to step in and stop the fight. The fight with Yair Rodriguez, I mean, he cracked Yair Rodriguez with a big shot, which shows he definitely has decent power. Then went for a takedown and finished him with ground and pound. It's very evident that Volkanovski hits hard, and you can see that from the lack of engagement that a lot of his opponents have when they're facing Volkanovski. A lot of guys, after the first and the second round, once Volkanovski completely outclasses them and starts landing shots, they don't want to engage as much because they don't want to get hit. So it's obvious that Volkanovski has some sort of power, but it is pretty average at the end of the day. He's not a KO artist. When he was on his featherweight run, it wasn't because of his power, it's because of how good he was as a striker, how well-rounded he was, and how good he was at able to land these combinations and land these shots. And similar to a Ciryl Gane or an Adesanya, he likes breaking people down round after round. He likes absolutely battering people. You look at the faces of Volkanovski's opponents, it looks like their faces are falling off. That's not necessarily because of his power, though. That just shows how good of a striker he is. So I'm going to put Volkanovski in average for power and on the lower end of average as well, because he isn't a KO artist, is he? He's more of a technical guy. But talking of Volkanovski's former opponent, Ilia Topuria, he's going in powerful. I do want to see a little bit more from Ilia Topuria before I put him in, like, ridiculous power. But he's definitely one of the most powerful featherweights in the world right now. Up there with Josh Emmett, who, by the way, he fought Josh Emmett and won comfortably. Now, the thing about Topuria, definitely hits hard. I mean, knocked out Alexander Volkanovski. First guy to knock out Alexander Volkanovski in the featherweight division. Now, granted, that was after Volkanovski did get killed by Makhachev. And it wasn't that short notice. Well, it wasn't short notice, but it wasn't that long after his fight with Islam Makhachev. The KO when he KO'd Jai Herbert out stiff. Put Ryan Hall out cold as well. Ragdolled Bryce Mitchell, obviously that ended in a submission. And even the Josh Emmett fight, even though he couldn't finish Josh Emmett, that fourth round against Josh Emmett, I was surprised that Josh Emmett was still alive in that fight because he got absolutely demolished. He's definitely a hard hitter as Ilia Topuria, and I've heard a lot of people saying that he could be the guy to crack the chin of Max Holloway, and I feel like we say that in every single Max Holloway fight, but Topuria really could be the guy, undefeated, really, really good boxer, really good on the inside, and really good combinations, and the second this dude connects, what we've seen over and over again is he likes backing people against the cage, landed a big body shot, bringing it to the head, and it's worked on multiple occasions, like I said in the Jai Herbert fight and the Volkanovski fight. And it's evident that he has a lot of power. Definitely one of the hardest hitting featherweights right now. Definitely one of the hardest hitting champions in the UFC right now. So I'm going to put Ilia Topuria in powerful. Definitely got above average for power, but he's also a super skilled boxer. Then we've got Derrick Lewis. I mean, he's just got to go in ridiculous power. I mean, Derrick Lewis, all he has is power. If you take away the power attribute from Derrick Lewis, he probably wouldn't even be in the UFC. The dude has power, and that's it. And that's why we love watching Derrick Lewis, because he could be losing the entire fight, like it was against Alexander Volkov, and like he has before. And then as long as he sets up that perfect shot, you make a mistake against Derrick Lewis, the fight is over. His resume already is super stacked because of the amount of people this dude has KO'd. He goes against the science. It doesn't matter how skilled his opponents are. If he just lands that one shot, he will put you out of there, and he's displayed that again and again in his last fight against Rodrigo Nascimento, the fight against Rogerio de Lima. And I feel like, yeah, a lot of these top heavyweights as well. I know he's already lost to a lot of the top heavyweights, but I feel like you match Derrick Lewis against like a Tom Aspinall 10 times. I can almost guarantee at least 2 of those times, if Derrick Lewis lands a good shot on Aspinall, Aspinall's getting KO'd. That's just Derrick Lewis in a nutshell. He has no skill. It's all power. But because it's all power, he's got to go in ridiculous power. I would say that Derrick Lewis, pound for pound, similar to Pereira and Aspinall, probably the hardest hitter in the UFC right now. And then we've got, finally on this list, Aljamain Sterling. I saw that Jones was kind of alone in allergic to power, and I feel like somebody had to join him, so I've put Aljamain Sterling there as well. Yeah, Aljamain Sterling definitely has zero power in the UFC. Never rocked anyone, never wobbled anyone, never really had anything significant on the feet against any opponent. Very good grappler, bit of a weird striker, but as far as power goes, yeah, he has none. And it seemed like all of Sterling's power kind of translated into O'Malley for that fight, where O'Malley was able to KO him. But that is my tier list of punching power in the UFC against some of the big stars. Let me know your thoughts on this list, if you would switch anything around, and your just overall thoughts on this list. But yeah, that's my tier list. Thank you for watching.